our fourth speaker for this evening, and we remind everybody that it's 18 to 20, so we'll get a green light at 18, right, Marilyn? Our fourth speaker is a surprise, and it's not only a surprise to each of you, it was a surprise to me because a few days ago, a while back, I heard this gentleman speak, and he did it on very short notice. And I suspected we might need a replacement tonight, but as of yesterday, I didn't think so, but we had to have a substitute for Suzanne, and that substitute will be a qualified speaker. Alipio de Veyra found out late this afternoon that he was asked if he would like to participate, and he said yes, like all good Toastmasters will do if they can. In the summer of 2019, our next speaker was very sick. He is a type 2 diabetic, morbidly obese, and with a brain fog so severe that he could only work 2 hours a day. He was taking 6 medications daily. His doctor's advice, we've probably all heard it, eat less and exercise more, was not working despite his best efforts. And then he decided to control his own health. He fashioned his own fasting protocol, and in 4 months and 6 days, he became diabetes-free. In December of 2019, he was allowed to drop all his medication. In addition, his brain fog is gone, and he evidenced by the fact in January he was able to pull an all-nighter, working 30 straight hours, a feat he's not done since he was working in the telecommunications industry in Seattle 30 years ago. Then, in May of this year, he had a negative reaction to the Pfizer vaccine. I hope that doesn't mean we're going to be blocked and nobody will see us. 3 days after the second jab, he was in the emergency room for congestive heart failure. Instead of bemoaning his fate, he looks upon this as another Mount Everest, or maybe in the words of Diane, a speed hump, a challenge to overcome. How he is planning to overcome that challenge is what he is here today to talk about. Please help me welcome to the virtual lectern, Alipio de Veyra, qualified speaker, District 12. Alipio?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and any guests out there. So let me begin with the requisite PowerPoint. Okay, loading up. All right. Ooh, it's not showing here. Okay, go to backup phase number 2, which is the screen. All right, start that up. Okay, let me start up the PowerPoint. Real quick. Apologies, you're not going to be able to see my face, but I think the content is going to be more important in this respect. So, all right. Okay, so as mentioned in my intro, I achieved becoming free of diabetes. I have been diabetes free since December of 2019. And therefore, I feel I can speak about this topic. So the most important thing is visual evidence, right? So here we go. So I started my fasting protocol in August 8th of 2019. 1 year later, I was there. I started out at 278 pounds at 5'8". I was down to 190, and I had built up my lean muscle mass, as you can see. And as you can see, there are all my 6 medications, which included a daily insulin shot. So why is this important? It's important to say, because of my experience, that I have a collaboration with Dr. Braden Barnett, who's an endocrinologist and assistant clinical professor with the Keck School of Medicine at the University of Southern California. The basis of our collaboration is Dr. Barnett has a clinical practice. His patients are type 2 diabetics and cancer patients. And he was interested in the benefits of fasting for his clientele. So our collaboration is that I submit weekly reports, which includes questions, medical questions, which I can't answer, or questions I had going through the medical literature. In exchange for my weekly reports, he was able to glean information that he could use to help his own clientele. And that collaboration continues today. It was established back in October 2019. Now, it's one thing, as we all know, we've all heard the stories as Toastmasters, right? Where people have horrible things happen in their lives, they look out upon a challenge, and they overcome it, and they become a more empowered person. However, that is only part of the hero's journey, which I'm sure all of you have heard about. The hero's journey is our journey of how we grow as people. And the end point of that journey is taking what you have learned and sharing it with the people around you, therefore uplifting the entire society. So after it was becoming clear I was going to achieve my goals, which was becoming medication-free and diabetes-free, I started taking that path, giving back. I became a senior moderator of an online fasting forum from October 2019 to June 2020. I established my own fasting support group as of January this year. Also, on the social networking platform called Clubhouse, I established a functional fasting where I was giving weekly talks about what I'd learned. And what was interesting was that a significant number of people I was answering questions for were MDs. Because in this country, doctors are not trained on the benefits of fasting in medical school or in residency. This was recently shown in that there was a nutrition company that held an online fasting webinar, and they had over 4,500 medical professionals from all over the world, and they were interested in learning about fasting. And then I'm currently also, I'm planning on taking this, getting certified on the National Diabetes Prevention Program, whose curriculum is approved by the Centers of Disease Control. And that's part of giving back. So what does this actually look like? Well, in my journey of helping others, I've helped a 23-year-old female establish control of her binging and self-harming behaviors. I've helped a middle-aged woman become pain-free after 25 years of chronic pain from cervical bone spurs. I helped coach a 36-year-old female to do a fast, which cured her ulcerative colitis, and a 35-year-old who had a very traumatic experience from a car accident was able to drop her anxiety medications. And finally, what I'm very proud of, and I'm sure all of you who know who he is, Tim Johnson was in the audience when I gave my QS qualifying speech last year, and he didn't interact with me or ask any questions. He just took that information and he went out and started doing it. And as a result, he's lost close to 50 pounds and has been able to avoid taking diabetes medication, which his doctor was threatening him with. Again, it's all about taking the challenges life gives us, becoming a better person, more knowledge, and then giving it back to others, which we as Toastmasters, that's our mission in life. At least that's what I believe and what I believe personally. So let's talk about heart disease in general. As mentioned before, I had the negative reaction to the Pfizer vaccine, congestive heart failure. Heart disease can happen at any age, but mainly it's for people who are advanced in age, as you can see. Average age for men having their first heart attack is 66, for women it's 70. 1 out of every 4 deaths in the United States are by heart attack. And here's an important thing. 1 out of 5 are silent. What does that mean? It means you may have a heart attack and not be aware you even had it. Also, heart disease is expensive. It adds up the cost and is a big burden on our healthcare system. As you can see, the 2 categories, heart attacks and coronary heart disease, 2 of the 10 most expensive conditions treated in the United States since 2013. And according to a 2011 study, between 2015 and 2030, the medical costs of coronary heart disease are projected to increase by 100%. Think about that, because that's going to impact the monthly fees you pay for your health insurance. So this is why it impacts you personally. So right now, current post-heart attack therapy, like for myself, I had congestive heart failure. I was hospitalized for 3 days at San Antonio Regional Hospital. And what happens with heart attack is you actually have a physically remodeling of the heart. You may have heard that they tell people that have had heart attacks, usually their hearts become less flexible. That's a reflection of the physical remodeling. Also, they're also told that heart attack survivors will be on medication forever. Emphasize, forever, because of this physical remodeling of the heart. So I want to point out a contrast. Remember, I've talked about that I cured my type 2 diabetes. When I started, I was told type 2 diabetes is a progressive chronic disease. That's basic fancy medical talk, is we don't have a cure for it. All we can do is stabilize you, and hopefully you won't get worse. And you'll be on diabetes medication for the rest of your life. Well, I think as you've heard of my personal story, I've proven that wrong. Again, I have been free of diabetes medication since December of 2019. And as I said, I proved them once, and I'm going to prove them wrong again. And the reason I feel confidence is of recent medical research shows it's possible. As I mentioned before, one of the things that I am on is a social media platform called Clubhouse. I love this platform because I have met healthcare professionals throughout the world, and I've attracted people who are helping me in my current journey. I have a PhD in my molecular biology, who's become my informal academic advisor. I call him that because every time I ask him a question, he buries me under homework. And we have conversations to make sure that my understanding of this medical literature is correct. I also have on my, I call him my science advisory team, an MD who's an oncologist. And he gives me his perspective, again, going through the medical literature that I'm digging through. So from their input, and the research they've given me, that's why I feel confident that I have a shot at doing this. So let's talk about what is congestive heart failure. What is that? So it's heart failure due to left ventricle dysfunction. It's categorized according to left ventricle ejection fraction, LVEF, into heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. Huh? What? I remember the first time I read this definition, and I felt as clueless as you're probably feeling right now. So let me explain what does that mean. So let's take a look at this diagram of the heart. I want you to focus on the left ventricle chamber in the lower right-hand corner. This is, for the purpose of this discussion, the most important part of the heart. The left ventricle is the most muscular chamber. It's also the largest chamber because this is where your blood becomes oxygenated from the air you intake through your lungs. Through the left ventricle, the oxygenated blood is pushed out through the vascular system to feed nutrients and oxygen to every cell throughout your body. Now, one of the key measurements in determining heart health is a measure of the left ventricle. As I mentioned, it's a repository for oxygenated blood. Every time your heart pulses, your heart contracts and pushes a significant volume of this oxygenated blood into your body. This measurement is called left ventricle ejection fraction, which you may remember from the previous definition. So what does normal look like? So the left ventricle ejection fraction, the range is 50 to 55%, meaning a single contraction or pulse of your heart will push 50 to 55% of the total volume of this oxygenated blood into your body. Well, in June 22, 2021, from the stress test I took at San Antonio Regional Hospital, my LVEF had fallen to 40%. And 40% is classic definition of congestive heart failure. So let's take another way to look at it because I really want to make sure you understand this. Okay, as you see, you see a scale, kind of representing what a healthy heart is. On the right-hand side, you have healthy heart muscle cell. They're called cardiomyocytes. This is important to know because it's these heart muscle cells that contract the heart. And if you have healthy heart muscle cell tissue, you see the result on the left. You have a healthy left ventricle ejection fraction of 50% or greater. So let's go through some other terms that I just want to make sure we're going to go through. Left ventricle, as I mentioned before, and as you saw from the diagram, is the chamber of the heart that pushes oxygenated blood into the vascular system. The cardiomyocyte, that is the heart muscle cell, whose function is to contract the heart. There's two other terms here that'll be new to you. Mitochondria are the parts in the cell that are the energy powerhouse. In other words, this is where the chemical reactions happen that allow the cardiomyocyte to contract and push that oxygenated blood out of the left ventricle and the rest of your body. And then there are cardiac stem cells. These are kind of like a source of cells that can be used for repair of a damaged heart. So what does a cardiomyocyte look like? Essentially, as you can see, they're long, straighted, and they kind of interact, and they cover the entire heart chamber, so they can contract the heart. So what does cardiomyocytes look like in comparison to other muscle cells? We have three types of muscle cells in our body. Cardiomyocytes, which are the heart muscle cell. You have skeletal muscle cells, which you've heard about your biceps, your triceps, your quads. And then there's a third category, which is called smooth muscle cell. And this is the inner lining of your organs. Primarily, the number one differentiation characteristic of cardiac heart muscle is it's rich in mitochondria. Remember, that part of the cell that provides the energy for the cardiomyocyte to contract. Compared to skeletal muscle, it has a lot, as you can see, the percentages. So when you have congestive heart failure, what you have is you have mitochondria dysfunction. In other words, those energy powerhouses, they've been damaged or they've been put offline with heart failure. And this leads to a condition called cardiac fibrosis. And you may be wondering, of course, what is cardiac fibrosis? Okay, imagine like a wall in front of you, like in your house, and you get some cracks in it. And so what do? You take some spackle, right? You cover up the cracks. That essentially is what cardiac fibrosis is. In terms of congestive heart failure, you have cardiomyocytes dying or damaged, and what replaces them is a different type of heart cell called fibrosis. And this type of muscle cell is less flexible and actually gives structure to the entire heart. And therefore the heart becomes less flexible. And if your heart is less flexible when it's trying to contract, that makes it harder for your heart to push out the blood. And this can lead to the condition you may have heard called hypertension. So again, here's a comparison. On the left hand, you see a healthy heart. You see the muscle cells. You see in the heart muscle tissue, and you can see what the dysfunctional part looks like. Give you a few seconds to process it. And on to the next one. So going back to our scales, so congestive heart failure. As you can see, we get out of energy, we have a situation of energy imbalance. Because we have weakened cardiomyocytes due to dysfunctional mitochondria, the heart can't contract as well as it could. So the left ventricle ejection fraction reduces from the 50-55% range I mentioned before and drops to 40%. And so current medical therapy is we get back to this balance in the energy with medication. Specifically, in my case, I have carvedilol, which is a beta blocker, amlodipine, which is a calcium blocker, furosemide, which is a diuretic. Essentially, these medications only address the symptoms. They do not solve the underlying problem. However, they do their job is they get back to an energy balance. But this is why, again, I refer to that common thing that you hear with heart patients, that you will be on heart medication for the rest of your life. And this is the exact reason why. Because the medications only address the symptoms. They do not address the underlying problem. So where are we in terms of how do we solve the problem? Well, because of the PhD in molecular cell biology, he does research with several stem cell therapy companies. And right now they are focused on fixing the mitochondria issue, which is restoring those energy blockhouses in the cardiac muscle cells. And that is what their focus is. However, the research has been decades long because it's a very, very complicated process. Now, where does fasting comes in? Well, I believe you can achieve the same thing that stem cell therapy is trying to achieve, but utilizing the natural repair and rejuvenation mechanisms of the heart through autophagy, mitophagy, and cardiac stem cell rejuvenation. Those are the three specific things that I believe fasting can do. So how am I going to do this? I have a current 90-day plan. I will start with a 40-day fast, and this will activate, rejuvenate the cardiac stem cells, will clear away the damaged cardiomyocytes. When I go and back into refeed, getting food back into my body, have a specific diet plan to provide nutrition to convert those cardiac stem cells to new cardiac muscle cells. Then the 30-day workout phase to strengthen the heart by reducing cardiac fibrosis. And the final baseline measure will be retaking the stress test to see if I've improved in my left ventricle ejection fraction. So where am I on my current journey? As I've shown, I have the academic research shows it's possible. I have personal fasting experience, which increases the chance for success. I also have this new invention from a friend of mine who's an inventor in the Netherlands that measures nocturnal sweat. So we're trying to establish a relationship between nocturnal sweat being like an advanced warning system of impending heart attack. And currently I'm putting together a pitch proposal to the National Science Foundation. And next week I'm meeting with the program director with UCLA Startup, which I'm articulated from. I got my bachelor's, and I have a meeting with the program director next week. So this is currently where I'm in my journey. Hopefully I provided information for you here and just showing you how I am taking and using my Toastmasters experience to help the world. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Alipio. I hope the audience is sufficiently impressed to find out one of our qualified speakers being able to step in with a couple of hours of warning. I think that's pretty impressive, and we'll be certainly looking forward to a report back in a few months and see how your work is progressing, and maybe you'll even inspire some of us to start living our life better. I couldn't help but think of the parallel, though. You started out by telling us all the bad things that can happen and made us sweat, and in the end, you're going to measure that sweat. So I don't know, but this sounds like a real challenge, and I appreciate your presentation.